Okay, so we're going to go over the EMIS new fiscal year checklist, kind of all the things you need to do before EMIS starts reporting. Some of you have probably already experienced EMIS has already kind of started to send some of those in, and they're probably coming back with errors because there's a few things that we need to do. Payroll needs to do to get everything up and going. So I'm going to share my screen. As we're going through this, if you guys have questions, by all means, jump in, unmute yourself. Everybody's muted right now, but unmute yourself and ask questions. Okay, hopefully you are seeing my screen, the USPS demo.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let me pull up the checklist. So we're going to go through the checklist and kind of walk through some of the different places. And can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So before we get started, a few things about EMIS. We get a lot of questions on when should I do this? When, I don't want to mess with EMIS. When does this stuff need to be done? I want a timeline. Unfortunately, there's not a hard and fast rule to that. In general, the prior fiscal year of EMIS closes generally that first week of August. This year it was August 4th. However, they have an appeal window. So if things didn't look right or your EMIS coordinator needs to appeal it, they can actually appeal it. And I think that goes through the 18th of this year. So this year is the 18th. So it's about 2 weeks later. So you really don't want to do anything EMIS related until one of two things happen. One, your EMIS coordinator has directly communicated with you that they are done reporting EMIS from the prior fiscal year and you're free to do what you need to do. Or two, waiting till early September when that appeal window is out. My suggestion is just talk with your EMIS coordinator. They're going to know best. They're going to be able to guide you and tell you, yeah, I'm done, or no, I did an appeal and we have until X date to continue filing. So you don't really want to do anything with the new EMIS year until you get the okay from EMIS. So that's what this first part is about. All right. So just going through the checklist here. The first thing is you actually have to update it, your EMIS year, to be the next fiscal year. So to do that, you go to System, Configuration, and then you probably don't have all of this stuff, but it is EMIS Reporting Configuration, and you just click the edit. It's got this crazy comma in here that looks like a number. Their SSET is going to fix that at some point, but until now you've got a weird year in here. So you just update this to be 2024 and save it. And yes, mine's really outdated because it's a demo. I'm going to leave mine just because I don't want it to mess up reports. So update it to be the new fiscal year and save it. Step one. All right, your next step is to archive all of the prior year compensations. You can do this with a mass change. The key with a mass change is always filtering your grid. So to do this, it's best to go to Core Compensations and click on either Contract Compensations or Non-Contract Compensations, depending on which one you're working on. So we're going to focus on Contract Compensations because those are your stretch pay people. So you have a couple of options to filter your grid. You can either use the label, which we highly recommend. If you're not already putting your fiscal year in the label, highly recommend it. It comes in handy more often than not. Because in this case, I can say, okay, my label for this year was FY23. these are my old compensations from last fiscal year. I want to archive them, and I can easily see that these are all the ones I need to archive. So then I would click on Mass Change. Down here, you're going to load your definition. And you should have something that says something similar to compensation archived or archive compensation, something to that effect. They could be called something different in each instance since it's not an SSDT created one. So in my case, it's called compensation archived. If you do not have one, put in a ticket, we will upload one for you. So you can see down here in the, can everybody see my screen? Okay, I know sometimes when you're looking at it, I need to make it bigger. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think it's fine. And there is also an adjustment on there where the user can zoom into it.
Okay.
So.
Okay, just make sure. If anybody, if at any point you can't see it, just tell me. So down here you can see that now it's going to say archived true. So when I click, so then I'm going to click execution mode. And when I submit the mass change, now all of a sudden I don't have anything up here in my grid because one, I have it labeled for, it's filtered out for FY23, and I am not including my archived compensation. So if I check that box, I can see them all and they are all archived. If I view one of them, you can see this says archived. And I can, if I accidentally archive one I didn't mean to, uncheck the box and save it. So if you don't use the label, your other option is to filter on your start and stop dates. So maybe you want, a stop date that's greater than, 6/30 of 23. It would help if I said less than. So now these are all of my old compensations that have a stop date prior to the last day of the fiscal year. So you could filter on that to do your mass change. So those are the two options. It's the same process in the non-contract compensations if you're using those and need to archive them and creating new ones. I think a lot of people are reusing non-contracts and not having to archive those or just updating them. But it would be the same idea. Which you just saw there, I don't have the definition under non-contracts to change the archived. So we can import it there as well. So just let us know if you need it there. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, next step number 3 is to clear long-term illness from fiscal year 23. This one is on the employee screen. So you're going to go core employee. And you could either go to your more button and add long-term illness, which is, I believe, under state reporting, long-term illness, so that you can see it on your grid. And I could do greater than 1. So you can filter for greater than 1 to get your long-term illness. And then you can mass change. And this definition should already be here because it's preloaded by SSDT. So you got clear employee long-term illness. And you just go execution mode. and submit. You don't actually have to have the long-term illness on your grid. You could just, clear the long-term illness without having it filtered out, because everything should be cleared out of long-term illness at this point, because it's all from the prior fiscal year. So if you don't want to add it, just mass change and clear it. We good there? And all of these, I'm not like going step by step based on these directions, but they are on here. So this should guide you through all of this. If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember that. Step 4 is incrementing the years of experience. I'm going to skip that for a minute and I'm going to come back because I don't want you all to leave. Because this one will make you go, I don't want to do it. I have tried to create a guide that I hope will make it easier, but it's not been tested out by anybody yet. So I make no promises, but we're going to come back to that one. So just bear with me. We're going to get through some of this easier stuff. All right, number 5. Updating the degree type and semester hours. So as your teachers are continuing their education, their degrees are changing, their semester hours are changing. In order to accurately report that to EMIS, you want to update all of that. And that is, again, on the employee screen. So this is a one-by-one situation. You're just going to have to find your employee and edit them. And then it is under state reporting. You could change their degree type if they have, maybe went up to a master's or whatever, and then update their semester hours. If you have a lot, we could probably pull this out on a spreadsheet and mass load it back in. Otherwise, probably just as easy to manually key these in. All right, number 6 is clearing prior fiscal year information from the EMIS related information on the position screen. That was a mouthful. So on the position screen, we have EMIS related information where you all know you're putting in position codes and all of this. Well, you also have these override fields down here. And this is to report something different than what's on their compensation screen. So Rhonda's going to talk more about how to set up these like EMIS screens later on. But when you use this, is say you have an employee who is split between buildings. So they're 50% here, 50% here, but you're only paying them on one position. But for EMIS purposes, you probably have 2 positions set up. You have the high school and the middle school. You're paying them off of the high school because you only want one compensation. Well, what you would do in order to accurately report their contract amount earned in each building, you would use this field. So rather than so maybe they're paid $50,000, but $25,000 is on the high school. So you would put $25,000 here, you'd go to the middle school and you put $25,000 there. That way you're splitting their contract between the 2 buildings. So obviously, if you're using this information changes every year as their contract amount goes up. So you would need to update this. So you have 2 options here. You can clear everything by going to a mass change and the clear EMIS contract fields. This is an SSDT definition and it will clear, hang on, I'll tell you. It clears these 4 fields on the position screen. But if you're like, I don't really want to clear it, I just want to update it, then that's when I would probably say, add on your grid here those fields by going to more, and then it's going to be under EMIS related information. So I added in those fields. I guess I should add in the FTE. So now I can see those fields on my grid, so I can wait for it to update. So I can come in here and say, all right, I need to know who's got information on their EMIS related screen. So greater than 0. And then I should, so this is everybody that's got a contract amount on their position screen. So then you can go one by one and edit them, or you can say, okay, that amount's not good, or, you know, whatever you need to do here. Here's a little tip. You can see here, I'm going to go in the weeds here for just a minute, but it's helpful. And Rhonda and I can help with this if you want to do it. You see how this says EMIS contract amount? If you were to look at this on your screen, it probably just says contract amount. I went in and so like this one says contract work days. You can actually edit these to make them say something different. So I'm going to talk about it for just a minute. I'll show you if it's something you want to do, let us know. But that is under System Custom Field Definition. And then it's under the, unfortunately, this doesn't filter right, so I can't really use it. But it's under the position screen. So I'm scrolling till I see position. And then we should see right here, EMIS contract amount, contract workday. So if I want this to say EMIS, so I know when I see it on my grid that it is an EMIS field, I can edit this. And this display name, I'm just going to say EMIS. And I'm going to save that. Now, I'm going to update my screen here. And now look, now it says EMIS contract workdays. So that is a great way to know that that is an EMIS field. So again, that
Great
is just,
tip.
yeah, that's, I never would have thought of that. SSDT brought that up. I was like, hey, that's genius. So that's under System Custom Field Definition, and then it's under the position screen. If you're not comfortable getting in there, like I said, put in a ticket, me and Rhonda can help. So there's contract amount, contract work days, full-time equivalent, and hours in a day. So. All right. That's my tangent. I'm off. All right. Any questions on clearing that? Why you would use it? The contract work days, it will pull. So talk about these. These are override fields. So this is to report something different than what's on the compensation screen. So generally, this is the one I see commonly used. The contract work days isn't as common, but I've seen it if somebody wants to report, maybe they have extended days that is being paid by timesheet or is it on, I don't know, something. But if you want to report an extra 10 days versus what's on their compensation screen, you would put that here. And the hours in a day pertains to this position. So if they're split between two different buildings and they're 50-50 and they're, 7 hours a day, they're going to be 3.5 and 3.5 versus their compensation screen probably says 7. And the full-time equivalent just equates to the FTE related to this position. On here, it talks about you could use a mass load. So that's another option here. If you want to pull out, you know, everything that's on these screens, we could definitely do, you know, rather than clearing it all or manually changing it all, you could run a report and then update the information and then mass load it back in. That's a possibility too. So you would just want to maybe filter your grid based upon report to EMIS true. So that way you're only looking at people that are being reported. And then you would run a report, and I would run it. I personally would do Excel field names. Even though it has to be a CSV when you upload it, I find that sometimes the CSV will drop zeros. And so I always use Excel and then convert it to a CSV later. But if you use the field names, you're going to have the correct headers to mass load that back in. And there are instructions on how to do that mass load. All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the different, you know, how to make sure your employees are being reported correctly. We have, most of you have probably seen it, the EMIS reporting scenarios, which is an awesome document. It looks like this. We do update it every year with dates, but the information down here stays the same. This is the only part that gets updated. It is on our website, which is maybe it's under finance, state software redesign, and then it should be right here, EMIS reporting scenarios. So just kind of explains when you can stop reporting people, when they get reported as a U, when you have to carry them for the entire fiscal year, all of that fun stuff that makes us scratch our head. So we'll just go through these briefly. If you had somebody resign and you put in all of their separation information prior to EMIS closing, so you knew back in May that they were leaving, you put in all that information, so they were reported with a separation date and reason last fiscal year. You can then go in and mark them as no to EMIS on both the position and compensation screen. If they didn't resign, so they didn't tell you they were leaving until August 4th, EMIS was done, you're going to go in and you're going to enter their separation date and reason. And then you're going to change their position status to a U. So that is the fields I'm talking about are, again, under this EMIS related information, you got separation reason and separation date. So if they didn't get reported last year as separating, you're going to enter that information plus change their status to a U, no longer employed by district in this position. But you still have to carry them all year. So position and compensation has to be reported. So backing up here for a minute, we archived all of last year's compensations. What's going to happen? EMIS is going to get an error that there's missing data. Because in order to report the position, the compensation has to be reported. So if you have somebody that you know didn't get reported as terminated or separated in the prior fiscal year, you need to go back to their compensation from fiscal year 23 and unarchive it so it can continue to be reported for this fiscal year. Clear as mud. I still find it's easier to mass archive all of them and go back and manually unarchive the few that still need to be reported. And you may not know. I always kept a list of people that I knew I still needed to work with. But if you're not totally sure when EMIS did their final submission, you may not know, well, did I get that entered in time? But we can always run an audit report to see what was entered, when, and you could talk with your EMIS coordinator and say, when was your last submission? See if the dates align. Of course, if you just stop reporting them and they need to be reported, they'll get a missing staff person. Then you'll know. All right, scenario 3 is if they resign prior to the end of their contract. So they started working this fiscal year. So administrators are a good example of this because they generally work through the end of July. Because they had work days in July in this fiscal year, you will go ahead and enter their separation date and reason. You are going to leave their status as a C for this fiscal year because they had days in July. At the end of this fiscal year, after we're done reporting, you're going to mark them no. So they would get changed in September of next year. It's a lot to keep track of, and I don't know of a better way than just keeping a list of people that left and what you need to do with them.
You could probably filter on the termination date, right? Just do everybody.
Well, not always,
within a certain
because
range.
if they said, if you didn't put it in, like maybe they terminated in July, but you didn't know until August. So your termination date is still probably going to be July. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess every district probably has their own little process there. I'm open to suggestions if anybody's got one. But that person is never ever going to be a U. You're just going to report them as a C and then stop reporting them. So this one always makes my head hurt. If you forgot to enter a separation date and reason for an employee who left mid-year, so last year, so they left in March, and you forgot to put their separation date and reason in, you would go ahead and say no to EMIS, because according to EMIS rules, you can't report a person from the prior, I'm fuzzy on those details. You can't report a person who left mid-year of a prior fiscal year in the current fiscal year. And then you need to notify your EMIS coordinator, because they would have to do a missing staff override request. Similarly, if you found somebody that was still being reported to EMIS, but they left 3 years ago, you would have to do a similar situation, no to EMIS, and then EMIS has to do the override request. So those are your different scenarios. Print this out, keep it with you. I use it all the time. I think it's a great document. But that is basically 7, 8, 9. So that's kind of the different scenarios. Number 10, make sure your new employees are being reported to EMIS. So you're going to want to go in and check the 3 boxes. So the report to EMIS on the employee screen, the position, and the compensation. There still is an issue if you were using employee onboarding to do your new hires. When they got pushed out into payroll, it doesn't matter if you would check the box, report to EMIS on the compensation screen. When it's getting kicked out to payroll, it's unchecking that box. SSDT is aware and is working on a fix. But know that I sent out something, but just in case you missed it, if you were using that, you need to make sure you go back into the position and compensation screen, specifically the compensation screen, and make sure that that report to EMIS box is checked. Which I know you all know where it is, but it is down here. So you want to make sure that your new hires have all 3 boxes checked. Also on your new hires, like there's some other stuff to check. Make sure that you've got their credential ID if they have one. Make sure you're putting in their semester hours and their degree level and all of their experience if they have any that they came with.
Yeah, I thought the interesting one was the military experience. Like if someone has military experience, they automatically get, you know, if they had 5 years in the Army or another branch of the service, that they could get 5 years in their total experience field.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Total and authorized are 2 different criteria. If you need to know what that is, David Downs did an awesome meeting earlier this spring, and we have that PowerPoint with that information that we can send to you. It's really good because I didn't know all of that stuff. Okay, moving on is a bunch of reports. So 11 through 13 is all these various reports in your report manager. If you do not see these reports, please let us know. We can load them for you. They all start with the word EMIS. So if you, under the report name, if you just search for EMIS, or I think most of them have tags as well for EMIS. I've seen this in most districts, but if you, I don't know, if you were an earlier district, you may not have them. But just let us know, we can load them for you. But there's a bunch of different reports out here designed to help you find out who's getting reported to EMIS. So you can just, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to go through all of these because it's just verifying data of various different things. So you've got, look at it on here, active contracts, active, how does everyone get the semester? That's a good question, Beth. Beth was asking how everybody gets their semester hours. I personally would get mine from, I was a smaller district, but mine came from the superintendent's secretary. And then every year as they turned in their continuing education, she would give me a list of updated hours. I don't know how everybody else does that. If anybody wants to chime in or throw it in the chat, that would work too. Okay, so these are just various reports to verify different things. So you can just run them. You don't have to do any, none of them have any query options. So you just click the generate and download. So this is what is getting reported to EMIS at the moment. Actually, I take that back. This is active compensations. They may not be, so you can see whether or not they're reported to EMIS. So this is a way to verify the data that's getting sent to them. You can check unit amounts, contracts amount, and this is pulling from the compensation screen. So, but this is, it's your people that are active. Active non-contract compensation, so their position is active, but they have non-contract compensations. Your active positions, so this is going to have different stuff on it. So here's all your job status is active and whether or not they're being reported to EMIS. And then all of the other various information that's getting reported to EMIS, so you can verify that. Is a good way to see whether or not they're being reported to EMIS. The demographic data. Good way to check, you know, their years of experience, that you have semester hours in there for them, making sure the gender's populated, the race, all of that stuff that needs to be reported to EMIS. That one. Okay, so that one is a little bit different in that it's got this filter pre-configured for a last paid date. So this might need to be updated. You might not want to look at people that were last paid back in 2020. Maybe you want to go back to 23, last paid maybe 7/1 of 23. And then generate it. And that's just in, so what I did there is, and that was the demographic. I clicked on the eyeball guy. And that takes you into this crazy looking stuff if you're not used to looking at the reports. It's just under the configure filters and you can just update that to be what you need it to be. And then you can save it. Just know that if you save it, it's going to create a new report with that same name. Because you probably weren't the one that uploaded this report in there. So you would probably want to save it and then delete the old one, or just update it and generate the report. Here is, so then you've got an inactive non-contract and an inactive positions report. And then an EMIS list, which I don't remember what this one is. Let's see, does it talk about it? Oh, it doesn't even talk. Rhonda, do you remember what the EMIS list is?
Oh, I love the EMIS list. The EMIS list will tell you if on the employee screen, the position screen, and the compensation screen, if reportable to EMIS is checkmarked. So you can easily run that and see, oh, okay, well, maybe, you know, I didn't check the employee screen for reportable to EMIS because it needs to be checked in all three places for it to be reported.
That's good. I thought I ran all these reports and looked at them, but I guess I forgot that one. And apparently it's going to take forever to generate. So that's
go through
another
all
one.
three screens for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So that would be a good one. I guess I didn't do any query options either. Anyways, so yeah, that's another one that you can run. But all of these reports are designed to just help clean up your data rather than you being like, oh, well, who do I need to look at? You can just run the report and see and do some filters and see who you need to look at. So number 14, there are reports out here. Okay, please stop. Under reports, EMIS reports. So these are different reports. These are going to give you, these are more looking for errors. not necessarily to give you information. So if you come in here, you've got the employee report and the position report. Once you've done everything else, you want to come in here and you want to run these. And it's going to give you if there's an error. So over here, there's going to be an error message, and I'll tell you the error message leaves a lot to be desired. So if you see an error message, there's a process that we at the ITC can do to help figure out that error. So if you see any, put in a ticket, we can help you through it, because if I recall, the error is like nothing. So that's on the employee and the position report. So there's this debugging that we can use to figure out what those errors are. But you want to run those until they're error free. If you have errors on them, you need to get them cleaned up. Why don't I remember this one? Is this the staff list? I swear I looked at this. And I must have skipped past this one. EMIS staff report.
Staff report. Let's see if that's in another instance.
Well, it says it's out here. If you guys didn't know this was there, under help, the public shared report library, it's great. You can click on here and get various reports and upload them. So here's that staff report it was talking about. So here, I'll teach you something else too. So if I just click on this, so I went, I did help, public shared reports library, and then clicked on that and it took me here. So I scrolled down to EMIS related reports. So, and this goes for any reports that are out here. If you're like, oh, I want that report, that would be helpful. If I click on this, I'm going to download it. Okay, so now it's in my downloads. And then if I go to Report Manager, I can go Import Report. And I'm going to go to my downloads because that's where I left it at. I'm going to click on it, open, and then it's going to come up, what do I want to, do I want to change the name or do I want to leave it? Do I want to do a tag? And then I can save that. And now I have that report in my report manager. Also, this looks a lot like the staff list. I wonder if they just renamed it.
Yeah, I think it's like just like the EMIS list or EMIS report or whatever that's called.
Yeah, the EMIS.
Because it's got all three of those where you're checking. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to run it. I'm afraid it's going to take forever. Can I filter it out? Well, here, we'll just run it, but we'll go employee report EMIS is true. So I think that's the same report as the staff list. I think they may have just updated it and changed the name a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That was this number 15 here. And now you know how to go out and get it. While that's running in the background. 16 is entering CC and CJ records. If you have any of those aren't as common of things. And your EMIS coordinator can tell you if you need to enter any of those, I think. And number 17, I think it's funny that this is on here, but it says to run the initial staff and course collection and data collector. You're not doing that. EMIS is doing that. but they will tell you if there are any warnings or errors that need to be cleaned up in USPS. Okay. I'm going back up to number 4 here. Anybody have questions before I start on this craziness? There you go. That's the staff
Yeah.
list. This is a nice report. Hey. So you can see whether or not the employees report to EMIS and then the different positions they have and whether they're reporting. This is a great report. Look
Yeah,
at
I
me
love that
learning.
one.
So like right here, you've got one where the superintendent, employee is yes, compensation is yes, but positions no. That is a red flag right there.
I mean, you spotted that right off the bat. So that's why
It's so easy.
helpful. Yeah.
And I did filter that when I ran this, I filtered out because to only pick up employees that were reported to EMIS. So this wouldn't be helpful if I was trying to find employees that I did not check as report to EMIS. So you could say no, I guess, on that filter. I didn't get a chance to read that. It left. And I don't know how I get it. Rhonda, can you?
Okay. If we run reports from number 14 and it shows no errors, would the EMIS coordinator have errors when she runs the initial staff and course in the data collector? So number 14 is
It's those.
debugging. Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes, it's still a possibility because I think these are more technical errors, whereas you might still get maybe a long-term illness error, something like that. So just because those are clean, I will not sit here and say that that means all of your reporting will be clean. It'll be cleaner and maybe not, the more technical pieces that are airing out. All right, incrementing years of experience. Okay, so there are 2 ways to do this. It can be done via a mass change. I don't love to use the mass change because it has to be done from the employee screen. And even though you could filter out the employee screen by, okay, so years of experience, at this point in the game, you have all of your new hires in. Well, you don't want to increase them by a year because they haven't completed their year. You don't want to increase anybody that didn't work 120 days last year. You don't necessarily need to increase subs. So my issue with trying to do this via mass change from the employee screen is I don't feel like I can filter this grid enough. If I could mass change it from the position screen, that's different. But you can't because years of experience is on the employee screen. So you cannot mass change it from the position screen. So as much as I would love to be able to do the mass change because it's quick, my personal opinion is that you just can't filter it enough. Maybe if you're a super small district, you could do it and then go undo the people that shouldn't have been incremented. I don't think that's the case for the majority of our districts. So I like to use a mass load. And I have helped many districts do this. But I've never tried to put it into a guide. So this year I attempted to put it into a guide. Again, it looks, I don't know, did I email this one out?
You did.
Okay. So if you looked at this and said, oh my word, what is she doing? I promise it's not that bad, and we are absolutely happy to help. But I feel like this is the best way to really increment the people that need to be incremented without, a lot of extra unnecessary steps. So I'm going to try to walk through it briefly because we're already at 11 o'clock here. Do you guys want to see me walk through this, or do you not care? We're at 11 o'clock. I didn't realize I'd be so chatty this morning. And Rhonda still has something she wants to review quickly.
Not seeing anything in the chat.
Come on, somebody speak up. I know you're out there. Or you fell asleep.
Yes, walk through it. Sure. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll try to make it brief. Okay. So I designed a report that is called Years of Experience. I will tell you, after going through different instances, some districts have something that's similar or the same, but it's not the one that I created. It might have some of the same information. Mine is called Years of Experience. If you're not sure, I can upload it. It'll be in my name. That way you know, and we can delete old ones, whatever. But I put on here the fields that it's going to pull. So I went ahead and I uploaded into my demo here, and it's called Years of Experience, Position Report, Active Job 1. So I designed this report to only pull in active job statuses and only pull in job number 1. The reason I did that is because if you have somebody that's got multiple active positions, I didn't want them on the report twice. And most of the time, job number 1 is what people are using. If you know that you have random people that for whatever reason, their active job is job number 2, they're not going to pull into the report. So if you know those people, maybe there's a reason they're not job number 1. You can manually update them. But if there's not a good reason, make them job 1. And it will not pull in people that are archived. So that's the way I designed the report. And so you can just come in here, and I set it up to be Excel data. So I'm just going to generate that. So this is what it pulls out. Employee number, last name, first name, position number, position description, job status, retirement code, last pay date, hire date, termination date, and then all of the fields. We've got authorized, we've got district, total, and principal. Let me go back to my guide here. So at this point, you can use the spreadsheet to filter. You can remove your new hires. Hopefully the hire date helps with that. If anybody that didn't work 120 days in the prior fiscal year, maybe you can pull out some report or some, maybe you have a list of those people. Anyone whose last paid date was not recent, that could be because their job status is still active, even though they are terminated. So that means you might want to go into their job status and make them inactive or terminated. The classified staff, their years of experience do not get reported to EMIS, so it is not a required field to update, although some districts do. Some districts use these years of experience for their own district in-house information. There's a new report that might use it. Rhonda, do you know if the what's it called? The eligible to retire report uses years of experience. I haven't had a chance to dig into it yet.
It should,
It
but
might. So
yeah.
the new eligible I'll have to look into that. But I can tell you right now, I've helped several districts do this, and not a lot of people do not increment the classified. That is your call. I won't tell you to do it or not do it yet. So what you can do here is you can, set your filters, and then you can filter out. So maybe you want to, look at that's the last page, hire date. So if you're looking for somebody that has a hire date of, after, 7/1 of 23, anybody that you don't want to increment, you're just going to come in here and you're just going to delete them. So anybody that you don't want to mess with, you're just going to delete. Bugs Bunny is new. I don't need to, goodbye. These people have termination dates. So, what's their story? Why do they have a termination date on the employee screen? Maybe they left and came back. I don't know. Retirement code. If you're saying, okay, I'm not going to do my SERS people. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to find just my SERS people, and I'm going to delete them. And then I guess I'll just delete them all. And so now I've only got my STRS people. So whatever you need to do to get rid of the people that you don't want to increment. I'm going to try to go by this rather than just trying to do this by memory. Okay, so now here comes the okay, so district years of experience. Again, that's another one where some districts use it, some don't. Totally your call. The ones that are required for EMIS is authorized, total, and principal. So this is where it gets, all of this so far, you're like, oh, that's easy. This is where I make things really complicated. And I use formulas to increment by a year. And it's a little tricky. So what I would do for my authorized years of experience, I'm going to insert 2 columns. And this column, I'm going to do a formula that is equals this one. So column K, the current years of experience plus 1. Okay. So now I can see it went from 73 to 74. I'm going to drag that down. I use this little, cross guy and double click, and it drags it down. Okay, so now I can see everybody went up by 1. Then, because it can't be that easy, I copy this entire column. I right click and I copy. And then I come over to Elm and I right click on Elm. And I paste as values, which is this clipboard with the 1, 2, 3. The reason I do that is because, and then I'm going to copy this header. And I'm going to paste that over here. And the reason that you copy the values is because I now need to delete this old column. Okay, because these are old and I don't want them. Well, if I delete this, now this column L just says 1 because it doesn't have the prior column to reference. By copying as a value, it eliminates the formula and it doesn't look at the formula. So now that I've copied column L as a value, I've copied over my header, so it's good to go. I can delete both of these. And now this is my new authorized years of experience. They're incremented by 1. You would repeat that process for district experience if you want to update district, and you would repeat it for total. I'll show you one more time just because I think. So I highlight 2 columns, I right click, and an insert. And then my formula is equals this. So my prior total experience plus 1. Drag that down. Right click. I highlight the entire column. So I come up here to the end. Right click, copy, right click, paste value. And then copy my header and paste it. And then I can delete. So hopefully I put this in here in a way that makes sense. Seriously, if somebody uses this, please give me feedback. What doesn't work, what works, what you would like to see, however we can make this useful to you guys. So that way you don't have to rely on Rhonda or I to help you. Not that we don't mind helping you, we absolutely love it, but you know, in case you're like, I just really want to do this on my own. So I hope I've done it justice, but I don't know. So I do that for those first 3, but for principal, it's a little bit trickier. You can either say, I'm not going to mass load this and right click and delete the entire column and just manually update it within their employee screen, which is, I'll show you real fast. Again, these are on the employee screen. And it's under experience. And there's a bunch of different ones in here, but the ones we're working with is authorized, principal, total, and district. Right here. So you could come into the principal and say, I'm just going to do these manually because you usually don't have that many, but you can. You could, you know, you have the position name over here. I don't know if I even really have any principals, but you could filter on position name maybe. And then what I would probably do is say, okay, he's going from 8 to 9. Maybe this person isn't a principal. Maybe this person is a superintendent. So they don't have any more years as a principal. So I'm going to leave them at 5. This person's going to go up to a 7. So you can just manually update those on here if that's how you want to do it. And then, so let's see, let's go back. So once you have all of those done, I would save it as it is. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to save it because I want to have, you know, everything intact. Because before I load it, so the only columns that you need on your spreadsheet are these 5 right here. The employee number and the various years of experience. So I would come in here and say, all right, all of this gets deleted. And now I'm going to take my file and I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm going to save it as a CSV comma delimited. That's the format that it needs to be in to mass load it. So I would save that. And then, so save as CSV. Then you're going to go to utilities, mass load. So in USPS, it's utilities, mass load. I'm going to choose my CSV file, which if you hover over it, it will tell you if it's a CSV. You can see it says comma separated values. I'm going to open that. And the importable entities is employee, and that is noted on the guide there, employee. And then cross your fingers and you hit load. I have no idea what's going to happen. I did it. These demo files, it's hard to say. And it will tell you, hey, I loaded 89 and I had 3 errors. And then in your downloads, you will have your error report so you can see who errored out. Maybe. And it'll give you
Ah. information
as to why. Usually it's probably not something like this, but these DIMA files. So you mass load it and then you're done. So, and I know I didn't go step by step on the guide, but I did try to take the guide and, you know, use a formula, insert 2 columns next to the one you're adding, in the newly created row 2. So I try to give examples. So please give it a shot and give me feedback. This was not an easy one to come up with, I promise. Okay, any questions?
I have a comment. I think that guy that had 74 years of experience needs to retire.
I agree. I agree. Did he start working at 5?
Maybe.
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen because Rhonda wants to review something quickly, and I promise you guys will get to go to lunch.
All right. And this, I'll just move this one over. Go real quick. I'm actually going to increase a little bit. I'm not going to get into the software. I know we're running over. So I'm going to quickly review this. And then these are great. I mean, a one-on-one ticket to get these all straight in your system, because, you know, these aren't easy. So, and it's district to district, everything's, you know, you can have a lot of unique positions for this. These are the EMIS only position and compensation setup. So this is one way that you can do it. So basically we're saying if someone's only paid by compensation 1, so maybe they're working out of 2 schools, that was Tanya's example, and so you're only paying out of compensation 1. So your pay distribution would probably be an account for maybe the high school and an account for the middle school. And we'll just kind of use maybe the 50% guide there. And so in the top section of the position screen, it would equal 1.0 for the entire full-time equivalent there. And in this example, again, it's all on position 1, which they're getting paid. And it's divided out in the payroll accounts per the different schools. So your position 1 would have a job status of active. And then the full-time equivalent in the EMIS section below, that should total 1.0. And that's all the different screens. So basically we're talking 2 different screens in the position, and the total of those would be the 1.0, the same as in the top. So I think I've got a demonstration down here maybe. So, and this has a couple different examples on it. So in the top, it would be, in the top part of the screen, it would be 1.0, but in that lower part, it would be, you know, maybe 0.5 and 0.5 in that EMIS section. So, and then the contract work days, if you're reporting it in the EMIS section, it would be the same, 186, and then, you know, 186 for the other one that's inactive. So all position and compensation screens are marked reportable to EMIS, as well as the employee screen. So they all get pulled in. And then only in position 1 do you select it's usually mostly the STRS code. And then the remaining positions are marked none in the retirement code there. And then the only compensation has populated amounts for the contract amount and the contract obligation. And the other compensations, if you have them, are 0 non-contract compensation. And then only the position one, as we talked about before, has those payroll accounts. Usually those are split. Well, our example was 50-50. So only the position being paid on needs the payroll accounts, and each district chooses to pay. It just depends how they choose to pay that person. So most of the time the districts are going to want to split it based on maybe the building they're in, or maybe there might be a different criteria they're using. So the total of the hours in the day for all EMIS section positions should equal the total hours in the day of the compensation one. And the contract amount totals in the EMIS section should equal the contract amount in the, so it would equal the total on the position screens, but it's in the EMIS section. So we'll go down to the example. Whoop, there we go. So in here, we've got one employee and so you can see position one, the job status is active, and these others, it is inactive. So positions 2, 3, and 4 are the ones which are there for EMIS purposes. So you can see this full-time equivalence, that is in that EMIS section for the full-time equivalent. So the first one, it's 0.26, 0.38, 0.18, 0.18, and that totals 1. So all of them together equal the 1, which would be in that top left side of your position screen for the number 1 compensation. And then also they're all marked reportable to EMIS, so they will all pull in the data collection. And on this one, all of these together, which are in the contract amount in the EMIS section, all of those will add up to what is in the number 1 compensation screen. So if we looked on the number 1 compensation screen, then that would equal what is in the EMIS section for the contract amount on the position screens, okay? And then on the EMIS section in the contract workdays, these are all 186, okay? And then in the hours in the day, in the EMIS section, these add up to the total of what is reported on compensation number 1. So, and then this is the top part of the screen. So we're having number 1 on that top left side on the position screen, and then the rest of them are 0. So 9 and 11, that is the total of the hours in the day for all EMIS section positions equals the hours in the day of the compensation 1. And there are 3 extra active compensations. All compensations total 7.75, and the total, which is the total FTE for the employee, and then the amounts in 5, 6, and 7 are in addition. So we had some extra ones here. These we talked in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, but maybe, my favorite is the band director who, they might be doing band in the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, and then maybe they have some extra compensation here down in 5, 6, and 7. Maybe they're doing pep band, or they're doing jazz band, or something like that, where they get some extra compensation down here. So these are kind of in addition to the regular, and this is extra compensation that they get, and they get some extra days for doing that job. So this is just kind of a little overview, and these are great if you put in a ticket, and then we can just go through these with you. We can see what the individual situation is, and just work through it and make sure everything is how it needs to be reported. So I want to thank Tanya for doing the bulk of this and touching on a lot of different things. As we can see in redesign, we touched on reports, we touched on customization of reports, we touched on custom fields, just a lot of different topics, and even pulling reports out, altering them in Excel, mass loading them back in. We talked about mass change. There's a lot to it. So we're really starting to grow and seeing our users grow in their abilities in redesign. So we'll go ahead and we'll kind of wrap it up right now.
Hang on.
And,
I forgot something.
oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yep, I want to share something because I totally forgot about it and I think it's going to be really useful. So I'm sorry, just give me 5 more minutes, I promise.
You're good.
Okay. So I want to show you something on the wiki page. So if you don't already have the SSTT wiki page bookmarked, do it. If you don't, you can go to Finance State Software Redesign from our website, and then SSDT documentation, USPS R. We need to remove the R. We got to get past that. Okay, so once you're there, if you scroll down, we have this USPS and EMIS connection. So if I click on that, I got other pages. This one right here is great. EMIS Level 1 Errors Explained. So if I click on that, it brings me this awesome spreadsheet. And whether it's a fatal error, so this is what gets kicked out of the data collector. So EMIS submits, and then they come to you and say, hey, I got a bunch of fatals, and then they send you this report. And you're going, what does that mean? So it will tell you whether it's fatal or a warning, what the display code is, the error message. So this is the error message that EMIS is getting, and this is the description. Well, some of these are kind of obvious. Other times you're like, I don't know what that means. So this one right here, check absence days, long-term illness, and absence days value and value. So if I scroll over, it tells me where to look. Employee long-term illness. Now it's not exactly what you need to do, but it's basically like this one is saying, basically there's more long-term illness being reported than absence days, which is common if you don't clear those long-term illness. But anyways, there's several of them here, and you can, like, it'll tell you where to look in USPS versus going, I don't know what this means. This doesn't help me. So I just wanted to show that real fast. And that, so then there's tabs down here. So there's the staff demographic and then staff employment. So this one is, yeah, same idea. Just scroll over and it'll tell you where to look, maybe what field is missing or what is invalid. So again, that is on the USPS documentation under the USPS and EMIS connection, and it's called the EMIS Level 1 Errors Explanation. So, all right, sorry, just want to point that out.
Great, thanks.
All right.
And it gives you an idea of what the issue is, and it's like, I might not totally get it, but I know where to look now.
Right. It may not be perfect, and we can always help you, but it's at least, a starting point. So thank you all so much for joining us. Sorry, this went longer than I anticipated. But anyways, I think it was good. So if you have any questions, just let us know and use that guide and let me know.
Right. And I'll attach the one that I discussed.
Yep.
And just kind of resend that out, and we'll send out the password to view the recording for those who weren't able to attend today.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a great day.